Grace, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for joining us. Where are you dialing in from today?
I am in Miami, Florida.
Oh, you've
I hate,
avoided that cold weather snap that came through.
I hate to put it out there, but we're having very nice, sunny, moderate temperatures down here, and I'm feeling pretty lucky.
Yeah, I hear you. Pensacola is beautiful today. Well, let's maybe Grace, if you could share a little bit about yourself, what you're focused on these days, and let's start there.
So I founded a company called Slinger, and we are a software company. We build bespoke business solutions. We started the company in 2011 around the notion that it had to be easier to build custom software because I worked in corporate America and in startups where we needed things that really weren't commercially off the shelf, weren't available. And going to the IT department in a large company to ask for some of these things was a $70 million price tag, which would never get funded. So I just, kicked around this idea like, can't we create a machine that makes it easier to build custom software? And we created one of the first low code application platforms. And that is the company that we have today. So, in light of AI, in the last few years, we've been looking at where do we take this low code notion, and we've decided to evolve into an open source framework for software development instead of a proprietary platform. And so, I'm very excited to talk to you today about what you see on the customer side. I will share what I see on the customer side because we believe that we're going back to the bare metal. We're going back to custom code for many of the things that people are assembling these very expensive legacy platforms to accomplish from an automation perspective.
Give a business person a little more perspective. So I'm a CEO, and I'm thinking I've got some business problems I want to solve. But to your point, I don't want to spend the money on a Salesforce, and they don't do what I need necessarily. What does low code mean, and what does it mean to them to have it done custom? And there is risk sometimes around how do I maintain it, and how do I drive it with stability and adaptability? How do you address that for an executive? What does that mean to be low code, and how do they own this internally?
So technically low code platforms have historically been sold into the enterprise. So the enterprise would adopt it and think out systems and Mendex, and these are large companies, and I am not. And so in the past, our value prop has been, hey, you know what? We can create these applications for you really quickly. You don't have to go through the friction of getting an internal platform approved. We can build these point solutions that integrate with whatever you need and build more cost effective automation. In Tomorrowland, which is literally tomorrow because we will be migrating our client into in tomorrow's world where we are operating as a low code framework, we will be going to clients and really evangelizing the notion that it's time you owned your own IP. It makes no sense in this world of agentics to continue the same pattern of buying that you have forever, which is I have a business automation problem. Let me go find another product to solve it. And now companies have noticed that their software as a service expenses are high and getting higher because what's happening is every software as a service vendor is rapidly trying to infuse AI, and they're just declaring victory. Ta-da, here it is, and here's your 20% price increase that goes along with it. And you, as a business consultant going in working on end-to-end automation, you must notice too that you're not going to use the Salesforce AI and then the NetSuite AI and then the Slack AI. It makes no sense. You need agentics that go end to end, and those are so unique by company. You need to own them. So the dirty secret is there are agentic platforms out there. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a Lang chain or a Lang chain like company that's like, we can help build, use us to build your agent. The dirty secret is they are somewhat transportable. Once you create an agent, you could actually create another agent that said, hey, I need this to adjust all my agents to operate like this now, because they're sort of structured the same way. So our evangelism to clients now is you need to start owning this. Why put hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into the balance sheet of these software companies when you need them to be yours, you need them to move at the speed that you move. You do not need to be attached to somebody else's agentic roadmap, and you don't need to be anymore. So we are going with an open source model because we believe that code is the commodity now. The real IP is know how, domain expertise, and being able to drive a distinct automation or a distinct customer experience that others cannot. And on that basis, we believe companies that win will compete.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do you guys look at you were talking about agentic AI with as it relates to your product? Is it something you're embedding? Is it something that you deploy in parallel? How do you see AI as a piece of what you do for clients?
So we are an open source framework, and the way that works, and large corporations are very familiar with these. So you basically the code base of the framework is free, and what the framework does is it orchestrates our framework, the Slinger framework, orchestrates the underlying frameworks that most developers already use today to create custom applications. So we're taking the same notions from the low code platform, but we're converting the way you would implement those to an open source so that there's no vendor lock in. We will do the services, we'll host it, we will, develop your applications, bug fixing, monitoring, or if you get sick of us or the project gets so huge and you want to staff it yourself internally, we will help you transport all of that body of IP to you and because you own it. So that's where we're different. There are in the past, I guess the most famous example of open source is probably Linux, right? And then Red Hat came up on top of Linux as a services organization. We're bundling that together in one because we think you need to. So in the future, that our value prop is here. Use the framework; it's free. We're going to grow a big developer community around it. It's going to give developers and corporations with internal staff a way to make sure that the applications that are vibe coded are really architecturally sound, that they have good security features, that they have the automation they need, and then that the company owns the output of everything built. So we're getting away from licensing proprietary platform, eliminating vendor lock-in, and really trying to convince companies, and it is convincing that they need to own their own. They need to own their own agent force. You wouldn't like rent out your whole staff. You know why are you going to just go buy an agent platform and be like, you own all my stuff? Makes no sense at all.
I think you're touching on really a point. I've been in this space for 30 years now, and the conversation was always build versus buy, right? Or lease versus build versus buy. And you're saying you get the best of all those worlds by building it with the low code. You own the outcome. You can migrate that outcome to any place you want when you're ready. It gives you, and the cost is highly competitive to a SaaS or a package. That's an amazing
Cheaper.
win. Yeah, cheaper than anybody. Yeah,
Because you look at who can afford you don't have any control over how much they decide to ratchet up your rates. So you hand off your 100 agents to some other third party company. What are you going to do? Like you're not going to sign the renewal?
yeah.
You're stuck. So I mean, do you run into clients that are worried about this, or like what is the thought process? Or like I'm curious, is because we run into a lot of people that are in sort of AI paralysis. Like, well, I know we should be doing something, but there's so many things coming out that we're like, look at the pretty kitty. They
Yeah,
don't, they
absolutely, Grace. And also a big piece of
can't.
what we've been doing is getting that roadmap built out so we understand the priorities and the high impact. We've seen two models. One is to first tackle things that are not going to interrupt production. So maybe, for example, one client was doing a uh, Amazon site type function where it's you're buying this in your cart. Here's 5 things that are relevant. And in a lot of industries, those types of more advanced shopping recommendations haven't been deployed, but AI is perfect for that because it can look
Yeah.
back you've got data, AI has insights, right? So it's a really powerful way to do it. So getting those prioritizations and either finding things that aren't going to interrupt production or that are really supplemental, or we are going to interrupt production or risk production, but we know that it's a high value item and it's worth the investment. And then to your point, Grace, it's how do AI is one piece for the agents, but what you're talking about to like connect the systems and the data points in a custom way to give the custom process is where your product is a perfect answer that they're currently looking to custom development, which is often very expensive. And there's all these nuances to how one engineer will code versus another versus your platform where it's open source and it's low code really leaves the business in the driver's seat.
And it's consistent. So, I think the missing link is people like you, because what we run into is every time we talk to a new prospective client, we try to find that same thing like, hey, it's not a strategy thing necessarily in the beginning. It's sort of a math exercise. Like, where's the bottleneck? Where are the people retiring that have intrinsic knowledge that you cannot replace? They need that sort of rigor around, hey, let's just roadmap it. And then once people get on the cadence of, okay, I've got this agent built and this is what it's doing, then it becomes a lot easier for them to line up, what's going to happen next. Further, in that process, they're gradually training their internal staff how to cooperate with agents, how to co-manage, and all of that is the human side of it is fundamentally another piece that's just missing. Like, nobody's talking about it. Like, you really gonna just have these people that are doing manual processes, and you're gonna slam this top down? They need to be there at the front line. People need to be participating in this process, and they need services, discipline services to take them there.
Grace. I think one of the things we've been seeing, the enterprise has known about program management for decades. We're seeing that move down into the mid market now where people are understanding the importance of air traffic control, right? And how do if I've set up this roadmap, how do I make sure I'm following it? How do I make sure the next shiny thing doesn't distract us? Or how do I incorporate that shiny thing because it's appropriate to come onto the roadmap? And that's where that program management, to your point, it's a internal, personal, human skill. It's not about AI or software. It's about individuals sort of keeping the cats in the right direction. As you heard, all the cats one way. Program management is the big thing that's been missing.
Yeah, so uh we found some very surprising human stories in this process. And so we also do staff augmentation. So we plug software developers into other external teams, and we also do sort of, data analysts, swivel chair types of work. And what we have found is the people doing that swivel chair internal work, they are great at training agents, prompt engineering, QA, and they really enjoy it, And so, and developing that skill and that rank and file for people that want to gives people a whole new career path, and it's because people that, yeah, they're very good at this, and a lot of this stuff that you got to keep in your head. It's nitpicky. Oh, you find you're the human interface between systems, and now they like their ability to replace themselves as that human interface because they know where the bodies are rated, and they also can do it for other human interface situations. I love that career path. We have like a few in our company, and I couldn't be prouder, to have sort of given them an uplift, and a whole new career path.
I think that's the elephant in the room right now that you're hinting at is so from your perspective, while we have UPS or Meta are doing layoffs and directly attributing it to AI, my feeling is that in the smaller organizations, it's the opposite. We are empowering our people and not doing layoffs, and we're getting to do things we wouldn't have otherwise. What are your thoughts?
I think that's right, and I think, as with all technology that starts to democratize people's ability to compete with the big guys, they're the smaller companies are going to win, is my view. I have this overarching view that the largest companies either have to break up because they cannot move fast enough to compete with the smaller companies who can, the decisive ones who can, or they're just going to aim the turret at the US government and try to just be a 100% government funded, you know, company. Like I don't see how the big companies compete here. I see these mid-market companies and even just humans with great domain expertise standing up these very impactful tools, and it takes them a couple hundred grand and 6 months, and they've got something they can sell, and they have the credibility, the relationships already. They have clients, and it's going to open some new models that I don't even think we've thought of. And I'm also hoping that software development as a whole decentralized. I'm an anarchist, I think. But software development decentralizes. It makes a lot more sense to have a zillion small software companies closer to the client and services companies like yours versus big fat internal PMO staffs that you can assemble to create the solution you want. And it de-risks everything. The decentralization is good, I think, for the economy. I think it's good for humanity, and it takes the power back to the companies versus the big tech providers.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And so as you think about just for yourself, I know I've had AI be highly impacted by a presentation I had to pull together for some folks. I had about 2 days to build something that's a 3 hour talk that usually takes a few weeks. And I was able to, with AI's help, accomplish it in the 48 hours I had. And those are the kinds of things, like to your point about it really empowers a smaller organization with less time to go compete on a big scale. Are there some ways you've seen an impact for you personally that's turned things around?
Well, personally, and I consider personally for the company because we're
Yeah,
sort of the same thing. So
agreed.
we've built tooling that lets us take an email ticket and we can what's called vector the content of that ticket. And what that means is you are taking a you're taking the information in there and you're sort of normalizing it so you can compare it to other tickets. So the ticket comes in, we have vectored every ticket we've ever had, and AI can say, you know what, this looks the parameters of this ticket look very similar to this one. We can auto generate an email to the user and say, hey, we are working on this, but the last 3 times this happened, this was the fix, and we can generate that email right away. And so the client knows, hey, somebody's on this, but I could try these things myself. Then internally, the people that are on support for the day, they can also look at that and say, you know what, these are the last 3 fixes that we had. And it gives them an immediate troubleshooting step, especially when, support, not everybody has experience with everything. So it really kind of consolidates all that understanding and generates a better result. So there's almost no part of our business that we are not using agentics in. And we're doing the same thing. Like where do we start? We have a roadmap. Ticketing was a big part of it. Um, we're using it to create our development pipelines. So plain language, automate the generation of the tasks for the agent that's going to code it. Um, Generate the validation scripts that are needed to test it. So we're using it in every part of the organization, but we're not doing it overnight. No, you got to start somewhere. But like my CTO's favorite words are, let's just get something working.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, and you mentioned security a minute ago, and that's definitely an area that I'm seeing a lot of risk. People are vibe coding out products, and then there's huge security holes because part of the vibe coding isn't necessarily doing a lot of penetration testing or other things to help make sure it will be solid. What are your thoughts there? I know with your organization, the software ends up with embedded security, I would assume, as a piece of the low code approach. So you have a good foundation to start. What are your thoughts around AI and its security risks it creates through vibe coding or its ability to be used against us?
Well, so I think we probably all noticed the sort of two-factor authentication mayhem. I mean, I think I log in 3 times a day to everything that I use with a fingerprint or an authentication app, or, I'm waiting for the retinal scan. And that's because, hacking is automated now. So those agentics that used to be like, hey, let me try for some phishing, now they can get very sophisticated about phishing. They can do monumentally more volume. They can have agents out there communicating with you to try to convince you to do things that sound like real people. So I think that's why we're seeing the escalation in our everyday, punching through the security wall just to use the tools that you use. In a custom code base, you're gonna treat that and the tools for vetting and penetration testing and security testing of custom code are getting better and better and better. So I believe that custom code is actually going to be more secure than relying on a big platform that can go down for everyone at the same time and everyone in your organization. So I think part of your security strategy for automation should be some level of compartmentalization so that you have maybe a separate application for each department that may or may not talk to each other as a direct connect. There are ways to segment so that your whole company, doesn't go down. I harken back to, I forgot the name of the platform, the automotive auto dealership platform that went down a couple of years ago, and the whole industry was down for a long time. And that level of risk is what comes with centralized platforms. So I believe that to counter that, you've got to be decentralized, you've got to be automated, have automated security, and you cannot be taken down by the security, good or bad, of the platforms that you're renting.
Absolutely. I think these are all valid points. And I really like the example you gave of internal use where the agent's proactively recommending ticket fixes. I think it's a good example of, again, my 30 years working call center, for example, knowledge management was always such a hot topic for, getting tickets done quickly. And now to have it be a proactive recommendation, not, your person working the ticket having to go search for solutions is an amazing step in the right direction.
Well, yeah, in call centers, I mean, we built for a client and it's doing very well and a agentic, and we did it on AWS before real AI came out, right? We did it by integrating Amazon Lex, Lambda, Connect, Kinesis, and now we've moved it all over to 11 labs. And this AI is a conversational voice bot. So call comes in to the orthopedic practice. There's call spikes on Monday and Tuesday because old people hurt themselves on the weekend. And you can't staff for that because they're really, apparently, they're very extreme. So this is a call overflow. Hi, I do some sort of HIPAA compliant handshake. Um, what's broken? Oh, my arm. Which arm, left or right? And I see your doctor is so and so. They work here or there on these hours. And it books the whole appointment. This thing's booking 120,000 appointments a month now.
Mhm.
And the practices love it
Yeah.
because they never get to the overflow. And the office, staff are very busy with the other terrible parts of healthcare,
Yes.
largely sort of dealing with insurance, and it just makes business flow faster. So for call centers, we are doing other projects on top of 11 labs for just stupid things that, oh, this company, you have to call them up on the phone to place a disconnect order.
Yeah.
And that's the only way they do it is on the phone. Well, you can have, they're very structured conversations. What's your this? What's your that? What's your account number? An agentic that has a human voice that announces, "Hi, I'm calling to do this. Here's the information." It answers questions. It gets better at answering questions the more questions it has to answer. And now you've taken somebody's life out of sitting on hold, to accomplish something they have on their list of tasks,
Yeah.
and let them do things that are just sort of more fulfilling and more interesting, dealing with business, um things that drive a business outcome.
Absolutely. The high impact, meaningful activities and that are more
Yeah.
rewarding. The mundane,
Yeah.
boring pieces, let the robots do it. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That
Well, great.
that's
Any,
where I think it's great. And I think that, companies like yours are the spear, they're the tip of the arrow. And you're out there doing the same thing. You're convincing people, let's start somewhere, you know? And that getting that one thing started is, I've never had a company stop.
yes. Absolutely. Just and the impact is always there, right? And it's whether it be ROI or, freeing up resources to focus on the rewarding things, which can, drive employee retention and challenge and growth. All these things are high value. Well, Grace, thank you for the time today. I think this is a really good conversation. Any parting thoughts you had for the audience?
Look, it takes courage. This will take courage. It will take a difference in mindset. And wherever you sit in an organization, your senior leadership may not align. They might not see what I see. They might not see what you see. But it's a place in time where you can make a career for yourself by affecting this change and making it successful because it's within your capacity to make it successful if you line up with the right teams, and I'll just go ahead and toot our horns, Mark. Teams like Mark and Slinger.
That's 100%, Grace. Well, thank you. This was a great conversation.
Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.